Alright everyone, the January 6th hearings continue. It's beginning to look a lot like what happened right after 9/11. You'll remember, 9/11 happens and immediately the government convenes hearings and stuff, puts on a bunch of political theater and convinces everyone we need to go and spend trillions of dollars invading other countries, spawning a war on terror that was really a war of terror. And now it's gone inward. See, we're not going to be in Iraq anymore, possibly soon either, in a direct combat role. We're still going to help, people bomb one another. We're just not going to have troops on the ground doing it. It'll be less expensive that way and just as effective. We've learned lots of neat tricks over the last 20 years of limitless warfare. So thanks, Uncle Sam. But anyway, now we're going to have a war of terror domestically, where the terrorists are most of the population, essentially. If you dissent against Beijing Biden's administration in any way, if you're not part of the lame establishment, you'll be treated the same way as people who oppose the Iraq War, as people who oppose the invasion of Afghanistan, as people who oppose the mass military spending of the Bush-Obama years. You're going to be essentially in the same exact group, which it's a form of mission creep, which is the tragic irony considering the similarity of what I'm seeing here and what I saw now many years ago. It's the same principle. The government is inept and it's trying to deflect from its ineptitude and put a public spectacle out there for people to consume, so it can carefully create a very, very politicized, almost transparently so, I think a lot of people are seeing through it, political line, establishing a narrative that simply isn't true. Now, first and foremost, if you're watching this video on YouTube, there will be a pinned comment down below, as well as links in the description to 4 other video hosting sites that I use right now. I have still not gotten a response from Dailymotion. I did email them, and they did email me back and send it to a different department. There's a problem there where they're automatically putting ads on my videos, and of course, I've pledged never to take ad revenue. As a result, I'm not currently uploading to Dailymotion. I might put them up on Minds instead. So join me on Minds.com as well. It's a good site. I use it more like you'd use Facebook than as a video host, but because of uploading speeds mainly. By the way, Bill Ottman. Just saying. But anyway, the January 6th hearing, so far all we've heard is a massive wall of propaganda, specifically very emotional propaganda. The funny thing is that Nancy Pelosi has now found police she does not want to defund. It's interesting how these police are heroes, and, Ashley Babbitt, fuck her, who cares? These guys are heroic, but other cops injured in the line of duty or which had to deal with far-left mobs, which caused billions in damage and dozens of deaths, threw bombs and Molotovs and shit at federal courthouses and other civic buildings for literally a year. There was never a hearing about that. They need to be defunded. Your community should have their cops defunded. Meanwhile, in D.C., not only are the D.C. Capitol Police heroes, but they're also, they have fortified fucking vehicle barriers and hundreds of National Guardsmen now all around the D.C. Mall, which were supposed to, by the way, be disbanded by now, to be clear. But I think they're still there at taxpayer expense, essentially violating the principles of the Constitution with regards to deploying the military in such a way, but we'll get past that. It's incidentally the cops that are defending Pelosi and Schumer and people like that. Those are the only ones that don't need to be defunded. So we're going to take the money from all the other forces in the country and just give it to the Capitol Police. So they'll have gold AKs pretty soon, and they'll be able to buy the good coke, from the CIA on the not quite so black market. It's DC, so it's basically de facto decriminalized. Everyone knows these people are coke heads. The hearings, though, that we're seeing, they look exactly like what we saw after 9/11. So 9/11 happens. You have, in many cases, politicized, although at that time it wasn't quite so hyper-political because the Democrats didn't dare to stand in the way of what was going on. And so you had the deep staters say, well, we were attacked, so now we need a war on terror. We need more airport screenings. We need more security involved with IDs and with gun sales. We need a no-fly list. We need warrantless wiretaps. We need expanded spying. We want to go through your library records to make sure you're loyal. We're going to need to raise taxes because we're going to spend trillions invading countries that had nothing to fucking do with the situation. And what you got is an initial unfortunate incident, unfortunately was then followed by 1,000 times worse trash that occurred because of the response. This, I fear, will be the case, or at least they're trying to make it the case, with the January 6th hearings. Here's what happened. On January 6th, a group of some tens of thousands of people convened to hear Trump talk. He ended his speech with now march to the Capitol peacefully and then go home with peace in your hearts. That's what he said. We have video of him doing so. Supposedly, this was a call for insurrection. Despite that fact, a few thousand of those people split off and attacked the Capitol. And when I say attacked, I use that in a very loose sense, because once they got inside the Capitol, which they were led inside explicitly, they didn't really do much. They had the opportunity to burn the fucking Capitol to the ground. If they had wanted to commit an insurrection, they had the numeric superiority, and in some cases, apparently, the Democrats claimed the weaponry, to have stormed in and killed half of Congress. Nobody was opposing them. There were like a dozen guards inside the fucking main room that they had sealed off. The police outside, essentially, after firing a few rubber bullets, stood aside and waved them in. They didn't even lack the permission to enter the building at some point. Members of Congress let them in the goddamn door. This is not an insurrection. And the idea that Trump, by the way, had anything to do with the acts that did occur there that were violent is preposterous. He explicitly disavowed violence in his speech prior. If he had been fomenting a revolution, wouldn't he have said to the crowd that was 10, 20 times larger than the number that actually went to the Capitol, hey, go to the Capitol and get inside there and demand that they stop the steal? Or something like that. That's exactly what they would have done. But that didn't happen now, did it? Well, that paints a little bit of a different picture than what we're hearing here. These cops, a couple of them are like, well, while I was being beaten up, I was being called the N-word, and they were telling me they were going to lynch me and put me in chains. And I'm thinking to myself, oh God, what hyperbolic bullshit. I guarantee that it didn't happen, because otherwise we'd probably have a recording of it now, wouldn't we? Considering every goddamn person in the crowd had their smartphones out, including some of the politicians inside. There are 1,000 hours of goddamn recordings. I haven't heard a single instance of anyone yelling any form of ethnic or racial slur. The reason why the claim is being made is to stoke up the usual emotional response. People won't want to disbelieve it because it fits in with the propagandistic narrative that they're trying to build of the people who entered the Capitol, number one, as insurrectionists, number two, as bigoted, ignorant Trump hicks, and number three, as especially racist and violent in their racism. The fact is, though, that when we look at their actual actions once they breach the building, by and large, 95 to 99% of them didn't do jack shit. They sat there. No, I'm sitting in Pelosi's chair. Whoa, that's an insurrection. I'm taking selfies, putting them on the internet. Yes, it's the Instagram revolution. It's horseshit. You saw 10,000 times more violence than you saw at the Capitol that day over the course of the prior year at literally hundreds of different U.S. cities. You saw dozens of people dead. I noticed that Sequoia Turner's name is never mentioned by Nancy Pelosi or Ilhan Omar or AOC or any of these other people. Also, the idea of a racist crowd of Trumpanzees fomenting insurrection, well then why weren't they better armed? And why is it that there were a bunch of people who clearly weren't white there? They were like little old grannies and shit walking around. There's a famous picture, it's like some 70-year-old woman or something. I think she got months in prison. And then you've got another problem. And this is why, by the way, there are no actual conservatives in these hearings. They don't want to have anyone, Rand Paul can't show up. They don't want anyone to countermand the narrative that they're creating for editorial purposes. And that's exactly what's happening. This is propaganda. It is roughly equivalent to what happened after 9/11, and you should completely discount everything that's been said at the hearings and everything that will be said. Much of it will be lies. The rest of it will be lies by omission. Like, the fact that 10,000 times worse happened over the prior year, and nobody did jack shit about it. No, instead they said defund the police. Well then, I guess we have to defund the D.C. Capitol Police then, right? After all, they're bigoted and terrible. They're thin blue line my ass. They're wearing a badge. They should take a pay cut, right? They need less weapons. We need to hire social workers to protect Congress. How about that? That's what I think should happen. Meanwhile, Gates and Taylor Greene and I think a couple of others were outside holding a conference. It probably was seen by more people, if you check out the live stream numbers. I basically, little clips and quips are what they're going for. That's the other thing. Be on the lookout, because testimony hearings that last hours and hours, nobody fucking watches that. Nobody watched the entire hearing, including people analyzing politics. Most of them watch snippets of it. Be on the lookout for very carefully chosen linguistic snippets. Buzzwords, sloganeering, the usual 9 yards. They'll be present, and they will be immediately promulgated by the legacy media. See, they're helping with the narrative. The legacy media and big tech are going to take those clips, very, very quickly edit them, and get them out to everyone. I wouldn't be surprised if there was an organized network behind the distribution in order to try to convince the public, look, these brave officers, the good guys, stopped the evil insurrectionaries. They were trying to overthrow the republic. This is why we need the infrastructure bill. Oh, this is why we need federalization of the voting system, which is partially the problem, meddling in the voting system. Partially why this all happened in the first place. People perceived it as being shenanigans. Duh. This is why we need a different fiscal policy. This is why we need DACA recipients to gain amnesty. This is why we need all of the things we've been suggesting anyway. And the only thing they're not suggesting is the reform of the DC police. Again, rules for thee, not for me. Dude, I was there when 9/11 happened, watching it in middle school. I remember that, but I also remember the shenanigans that happened afterwards. The 5-second little sloganeering clips, and Bush doing his patriotism shtick, which, whatever, he's basically a liberal too. I remember all of this happening before. It's going to be used to try to push off more censorship, probably warmongering. They'll dovetail this somehow with, well, this was partially caused by Russian propaganda. By the way, here's this country that Russia is using as a pawn to attack our troops. We must invade. I wouldn't even be surprised if they do it. They'll probably pull it off too, because the public oftentimes has a short attention span, and when they are afraid, which is what they're trying to cause with this hearing, when people are afraid, they will vote for more authoritarianism. By the way, they've got to pivot away from COVID. People are no longer as afraid of that bullshit anymore. You've noticed this, which is why a lot more people are ignoring mask mandates or saying, hell no, I'm not going to bother going out of my way to social distance and all this horse shit. It's like 100 degrees out, fuck you. That's about all. Peace out.